was a lover before this war, held up in a luxury suite behind a soundproof recording studio door for another episode of Columbia House Party. Jake, what's up?
That was a good one.
Yeah, glad you like it.
Little more editing in that one.
Yeah.
I like it.
Yeah, you know, I share a little bit about me to start the podcast. I just, before we came on to record this, had a digital therapy session. And
Hey.
I'm in the last 2 hours of a 48-hour fast. So I am a husk of a person right now, Jake. I hope you're ready to carry this podcast.
What's the, explain the fast for me.
I joined a weight loss betting pool with like 12 other people. And it's not like an immediate thing. Like you don't need to, like I'm not like cutting weight like UFC or high school wrestling or anything. But
Right.
a couple of the people in there were talking about starting on a 48-hour water fast. Basically, I read up on it and first of all, it seemed like a good mental challenge. And I know a lot of people get some like mental benefits from the process of fasting and the discipline that requires and stuff like that. There are also a lot of physical benefits, or at least believed physical benefits. It can help like reset basically your hormone levels and your insulin sensitivity. And then there is a recent Nobel Prize winning paper about how your cells deal with dead cells or non-functioning cells, and how fasting for a prolonged period can help with that. And it's been shown, or at least is highly theorized, to help like with long-term health stuff. By turning dead cells or unfunctioning cells into good cells. And that kind of peaks in the 24 to 36 hour range of a fast. So yeah, I thought it'd be a good mental challenge. I had 2 lighter days. I mean, they're all light days physically now. So there's not a lot of me left, Jake. And throw a therapy on top of that. And yeah.
Well, I got you here. I got you here then. I will pick up your slack. I am not in any kind of fast. So I will do what I can.
We're going to talk about more than just mental health stuff and fasting today. We're going to talk about a pretty kick-ass album. It's also never a bad idea to just dip back into the Meet Me in the Bathroom lore when you need a connection episode, because a lot of these guys connect, and girls connect, all over the place. So once you get to Dave Sitek, you get like this kind of cheat code for the Columbia House Party connections between episodes, because Dave Sitek has touched everything. So Jake, where are we going today?
Yeah, this show could really just be the Dave Sitek show, and we could do the same gimmick and be fine.
Yeah, it'd be great. I have a point on that regard coming up after you tell us where we're going specifically with Sitek today.
So today, as you pointed out, Dave Sitek had his hands in pretty much all of the early to mid 2000s indie rock scene coming out of New York, which was, I think, for like most people of my generation, our sort of intro to indie rock, so to speak. And so when I was in high school, I got into all of those bands. I can't really remember exactly how. Like, I want to say it was just because they were kind of everywhere, whether it was much music or just people, word of mouth or whatever. But, you know, the Yeah Yeah Yeahs, Bright Eyes, Arcade Fire, that whole kind of era. And one band I don't really remember how I came to specifically. I'm sure it was because of their hit single, which we will talk about today. That was
Unavoidable.
Yeah. I have no idea how I first heard it, but I remember I bought the CD off the back of the single and listened to it and didn't totally get it as an album. I don't think I was there yet in my musical discovery. But then in university and in my early 20s, I started to really get it. And this band for a period of time was one of my favorite bands in the world. They're still a band I really like, but I don't know if they've quite kept up that momentum. But that is all because of the album we're talking about today, which is I will use the term momentous 2006 album by TV on the Radio, Return to Cookie Mountain.
right, that was I Was a Lover from, as Jake said, Return to Cookie Mountain by TV on the Radio. Like we said off the top, never a bad time to dive back into Lizzie Goodman's Meet Me in the Bathroom. Jake, you mentioned how you came across TV on the Radio way back when. I actually never really listened to them and dug in until I read Meet Me in the Bathroom last summer, at which point I tracked down a Meet Me in the Bathroom based playlist and explored some of the bands that I hadn't heard as much, not to give away the ranking and debate segment for the end of the show, but it sure feels wrong that TV on the Radio somehow hadn't broken through to reach me until then, because they kick ass.
Yeah, I think they're one of those bands. We've talked this a couple times with other bands that I can't remember which specifically, but we've talked a couple times about bands that you really like and then you kind of don't forget about, but they're not in your like heavy rotation. And then you listen to them and you're like, oh, why am I not listening to this band all the time? And I feel like TV on the Radio are one of those for me.
They sure are.
In doing the research for this episode, I was like, oh, I'm just going to listen to this for the next question mark.
Yeah, it's great when you stumble across that, especially since, you know, we talk on the bonus episodes, we do kind of our new music roundup, but I have found myself gravitating more toward old standbys than going too deep on new stuff. I've been trying a lot of new music, but I've tended to do longer sits with throwbacks or old reliables, and TV on the Radio certainly scratched that itch. Although, again, as I said, I was a late fan to TV on the Radio. The other reason we could do TV on the Radio, mentioned off the top, Dave Sitek. I have an idea in my head, Jake, and I'm sorry to spoil it here, especially if it doesn't actually happen. But I feel like on one of our bonus episodes, maybe when we're like, I don't know, 50 or 100 episodes in or whatever, we are going to do like a Columbia House Party Hall of Fame first round of induction. And look at just some of the credits that Sitek has. Yeah Yeahs, TV on the Radio, Jane's Addiction, The Orwells, Wale's Attention Deficit, which is the best Wale piece out there, Khalees, Beyonce and Jay-Z, Weezer, he even featured on an MF Doom track. Dave Sitek, early candidate to be one of the first Columbia House Party Hall of Famers.
Truly, yeah. Like there's even more. Like you can even add Liars, The OCs, Foals, Santa Gold.
Foals,
like,
yeah.
It's not only is it so many bands that we will either talk about or enjoy, but it's such a broad scope of genres that is quite impressive for a guy that I didn't know. Like when I first got into this band, I thought he was just the guitar player in TV on the Radio.
No, and then you find out all the different stuff he's had his hand in and all the different influences he's had. And even before you learn about the other members of TV on the Radio, you definitely get an appreciation of how their sound can be as different and unique as it is. We're going to talk about what TV on the Radio sounds like and the other pieces that make up that band after this.
TV on the Radio were formed in 2001 by Tunde Adebimpe and Dave Sitek. As we said, Dave Sitek's somewhat a legend in the New York indie scene. He wasn't at the time when they met and started, but he was well on his way. In the aforementioned wonderful book, Meet Me in the Bathroom, Dave Sitek said that I showed up in New York in late 1999, early 2000. I was in Baltimore and I was in a 10-year relationship. We broke up and I went nuts. I was like, well, fuck it. If I'm going to live on the edge, I might as well live on the edge with my brother and in New York. So I moved to New York. Tunde Adebimpe had moved to New York in 1993 for school and said in Meet Me in the Bathroom that in his third year, he was asked to leave, which was a nice way of saying you're failing out. So the two of them met because Dave Sitek was selling some of his paintings on the street as he was a artist as well as a musician. And Sitek said that Adebimpe said, you have no clothes and no furniture, but you have paint and drum machines. And I was like, yeah, that's kind of the vibe. So the two of them and Dave Sitek's brother moved into an apartment together in New York that Karen O dubbed the Sandbox because she would come over and there would be paint, paper, and silk screening stuff everywhere. Tunde Adebimpe was an animator on the show Celebrity Deathmatch, if you remember that old cartoon show. He was one of the first animators on that.
I want to know which ones he was responsible for.
Me too. Sitek was a visual artist and a painter, and as well was getting into his production side of things in New York. So that's why it was called The Sandbox. While living together, the two started making music. Adebimpe said, the night Dave and I started making songs together, we ended up putting 6 of them on this disc called OK Calculator. We hid CDs in furniture stores or bookstores. We had an email address on the back, so people actually started writing, being like, I found this CD. What is this? What's going on? Who are you guys? Then Dave started producing with Yeah Yeah Yeahs, so he'd be gone for a few months, and I'd just go back to what I was doing. Which, I felt this a lot, reading a lot of the parts of Meet Me in the Bathroom, but I found it really striking with this idea that you could start a band in a scene like the New York early 2000s scene that was obviously so overbrimming with creativity and talent. And then you could just do shit like hiding CDs in stores and hoping people found them and seeing what happened. Like, I think that's it's a thing that will never happen again and can never happen again.
Yeah. Like it seems like a bad B plot from Empire Records or High Fidelity.
Totally. But it's just such a, like, there's a very, like, nostalgic, music-y art thing to it that I really enjoy.
Yeah, it's very cool. It's just completely impossible in 2020. It's like, what do you, like you can't covertly, like, sneak your songs onto people's phones unless you are already a monolith like U2.
And then everyone got pissed off about it anyway.
Yeah.
So, although if they snuck something that sounded like OK Calculator onto my phone, maybe I would mind a lot less.
Maybe. I don't think it's worth trying though. I feel like the risk there is too high, and the capital needed behind it. Like, I mean, we don't need to talk about it too seriously. You need to be a gigantic band already to have the ability to do that.
So Tunde Adebimpe told Downhill Battle that OK Calculator was 24 tracks of 4-track stuff, and that's online now. We sold a few of them on the first tour, a couple, then the CD burner broke, etc. That's online, and someone wrote about it as the extremely rare but superb OK Calculator. And I'm sitting there going, are you kidding me? Rare, yeah. Rare because we were making them ourselves. And superb, that's not up to us, but it's not superb. I'd be the first to tell you, there's more hiss on some of these songs than there are songs. And it's fun, and I love it, but I wouldn't call it superb. And I think if you've ever listened to OK Calculator, that, I think, is not a incorrect summation of it. I remember when I was first getting into this band and doing my deep dive, learning that was the first thing they put out, and like half of it is just nonsense. I love it, but it's like there's some harsh noise, as we like to say.
I mean, look, I LimeWired a lot of pop punk in the early 2000s. I know how poor sound quality can come up. Before that kind of Blink-182 cleanness took over the industry sound,
Mm-hmm.
I certainly recognize what the sound you're talking about.
Shortly after the release of OK Calculator in 2003, Kip Malone joined the band on vocals and guitars, among a bunch of other instruments. The three of them would release the Young Liars EP in 2003, which was 5 songs long, including a Pixies cover. They would follow up the release of their EP with their debut LP, Desperate Youth, Bloodthirsty Babes, which is a very early 2000s indie rock album title. It was their first full length, and it included their debut single, which was remixed from the Young Liars EP, and that song is Staring at the Sun.
Staring at the sun, you're standing
Can't believe they just ripped off the Offspring staring at the sun. It's the worst Offspring cover I've ever heard.
That I won't lie. The first time I saw the song title, that was also my thought, because we are
how do you not make
of the
Americana?
We are of the Americana generation. In 2005, after the release of Bloodthirsty Babes, the band was joined by Jaleel Bunton on drums and percussion, guitar, Rhodes, organ, synths, and backing vocals, and Gerard Smith on bass, organ, piano, and also a ton of instruments. As they were all kind of guys who did their own thing, the band sort of seems to have formed almost not on accident, but they just like started playing music and then they were TV on the radio. Adebimpe said in Meet Me in the Bathroom, a friend of mine, we were once talking about how he realized he was gay. And he basically said, I realized that I was going to bed with more men than women. That's how it was with TV on the radio. At some point, I had to admit to myself, I was like, I've been in a band on tour for more time than I haven't, so I guess I'm in a band.
All right, that's one way to describe it.
It's a metaphor.
Cool.
Bunton followed up by saying, everyone in the band had been here for some time already. Everyone had done time in the coffee shops, had done time in whatever other job. Everyone in the band had a grunt side. We grew up grunt people, did grunt work. We never really saw the people that didn't live in the world of I work in some shitty coffee shop, which, if you go back to their origin story, obviously totally checks out. Bunton actually joined the band because he was in another project, an electronic music project in New York, and would come see the early days of TV on the radio. And he went up to Dave Sitek and Tunde Adebimpe one day and said, I saw you guys and you need me, despite the fact that he didn't really play drums, which is a really cool way to join a cool band.
That's a big heat check.
Yeah. To go up to the guys this talented and say you need me is...
And guys this cool. Like Tunde on stage is very cool.
Yes, one of the coolest frontmen in the world. Gerard Smith joined because Dave Sitek claimed he was just the other best guitarist he knew, which, fair enough. So,
yeah,
in the time between Bloodthirsty Babes and Cookie Mountain, the band started to gain a significant amount of buzz in New York and in the indie scene. Shortly before the release of the album, they signed to major label Interscope. And there's a interview with that Dave Sitek did with Pitchfork in around 2005, 2006. And it's so very mid 2000s because almost every single question in the interview is about them signing to a major label and how they should feel about that, which is pretty funny. But I like their attitude is basically, we don't care. Sitek said,
like, is the tone like you guys are selling out kind of thing?
The tone is more like, how do you feel about accusations of selling out?
Ah, okay.
Like, it's not directly questioning it, but it kind of is. But Sitek said in this interview, when asked why they signed to a major label, he said, just to get the music heard by the most amount of people. We don't want to be hidden behind some shroud of secrecy. I don't think that TV on the radio is some dark, mysterious band that no one can know about. We write music because it's an immediate form of communication. We're able to put on record what's happening in our times, and we want that message to be heard by the most amount of people, which I think is the correct answer when someone asks, why did you sign to a major label?
Yeah, another potential answer, Interscope can get us on Letterman.
Yeah, exactly. They also were pretty forward-thinking about early online marketing, at least in this world. Todd P. says in Meet Me in the Bathroom that TV on the radio had a foot in the previous world, but they were the first one to get big on not going after the radio crowd. They were going for a certain kind of indie crowd, but an indie crowd that wasn't the punk indie crowd, and an indie crowd that found out about things through NPR, which today is very normal, but back then I could see being a little, I don't know if revolutionary makes sense, but sort of in a little different, I would say.
Ahead of the curve?
Yeah. Sitek also said in relation to joining Interscope, I looked at it like I didn't want to alienate anyone. I think that being on Interscope, if a volunteer firefighter in Montana wants to check us out, it would be easier to get our record, which totally fair.
These guys with the weird analogies. I guess that's not an analogy. It's just a very strange and specific example.
Yeah, I think that's accurate. The band has never really revealed why this album is called Return to Cookie Mountain, but it is believed to be a reference to Super Mario World, which just makes me like it more.
I gotta be honest, saying the word cookie 40 times at the end of a fast, not the best thing for me right now.
Sorry, I'll try to keep it out of my mouth.
Yeah, that's fine.
The album's sound, so to speak, is sort of, I would say, is defined by the interplay of Kip Malone and Tunde Adebimpe's vocals, Sitek's electronic production, and the rhythm section of Smith and Bunton that's just so incredibly solid. Like, not only are they obviously extremely talented musicians in their own right and played more instruments than just bass and drums on this record, but I like to think of their rhythm section sort of like, we talked a little about this in the Radiohead episode about how Phil Selway is like, he's never super flashy, but he makes everything work. And I feel like the rhythm section of TV on the Radio is very similar in that respect, which I always get a kick out of. You can hear the interplay of the vocals and the ways that this sound sort of kicked my ass in 2006 from this song, Province.
Also, some backing vocals there from TV on the Radio superfan David Bowie.
That's correct. He just dropped into the studio, apparently, while the band was recording and liked it and lent his vocals to it. Kip Malone told Exclaim that when asked about Bowie being on the record, he said, "Honestly, I think one would be a fool to pass up the opportunity to work with him. There was a moment of egotistic preciousness where I was fearful that it was going to turn the song into a backdrop for someone to be a superstar, but it wasn't that way at all. He was such a team player and so supportive and wonderful to work with, and not showboating and not there because of self-aggrandizement, but to help us and be supportive and be part of it because he liked it." Which, David Bowie showing up, it's pretty cool.
Yeah. Yeah, per a story in The Guardian in 2006, apparently Bowie was a huge fan of Desperate Youth, Bloodthirsty Babes. So he was also, in addition to dropping in to do this, he was kind of advising them, like, hey, like, this anti-Bush movement right now, you should probably get in on that. Obviously, Dear Science is much more of their anti-Bush album than this one is, but pretty cool. When Bowie is advising you musically and politically and also giving you backing vocals, I feel like you're in a really good spot. I can't imagine, like, short of maybe Prince, I can't imagine having, like, had a cooler seal of approval in the early mid-2000s from someone.
Yeah, it's pretty, I mean, it's David Bowie, just period, but B, him doing it just because he likes your, like, TV on the Radio are already insanely cool, but, like, David Bowie being like, oh, I also like you?
Yeah. Yeah, there's different levels of cool. There's cool, and then there's David Bowie thinks you're cool.
Yeah,
cool.
Absolutely. In regards to the production of the album, Kip Malone told Exclaim, "We have tons of vocal tracks. I'll do 3-4 sets of tracks, and Tunde will do 3-4 sets of tracks. It's painstaking, and we try really hard, and I still hear things that I wish I could go back and change, but that just gives me the encouragement to say we're not finished yet, that we can try to get it to sound perfect next time." And I think one of the reasons maybe I didn't totally click with this album or get it when I was 18 is because of the amount of tracks on the record. It's not your sort of typical sounding indie rock record that's kind of easy to keep track of. There's so much going on in all the songs that makes it such a full sound that makes sense if that's how they do it.
Having said that, while I realize that a lot of the times on this podcast we've expressed that, hey, we're kind of glad everything is turned away from 15-song, 71-minute albums, an album having 5 songs over 5 minutes long, including an 8-minute one, is extremely you.
Yeah, that's fair.
So not surprised that this one hit for you.
I have this one on vinyl, and it's a real pain to get up and change the record every 20 minutes because there's so much of it. As I was kind of alluding to earlier regarding marketing being a forward-thinking thing for this band, Interscope wanted to market the album with short films on the internet, but as he is an animator, Tunde Adebimpe offered just to create them himself, which he did. And he told Magnet Magazine that Interscope was like, they're going to take the band's image and try to promote the record. I told him I'd like to have a shot at that because I don't want people I don't know to be doing anything with the band in that way, because God only fucking knows what it would turn into. If anyone's going to fuck it up, I'd rather have my fingerprints all over it. I'd rather have to answer to all of my friends instead of all of us being pissed off at some dude whose idea of cool is really, really evil and awful, which I think is fair.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, so few bands have the capability to take care of their image like that. Like, yeah. Not every group has the benefit of an animator,
especially on a debut, like a major label debut. To have that control is pretty cool.
Yeah, to get that concession from Interscope, and I guess it's important too. Obviously, it's important because you care about your art and your image and stuff. But for a band that kind of thrived on their level of coolness, not wanting to hand over your image control to some suit.
Yeah, exactly.
It's pretty smart.
The songwriting on the album is about a direct 50-50 split between Malone and Adebimpe, which I think is cool. They each have 6 songwriting credits on the record. Dave Sitek is also credited on 3 songs. The album actually leaked significantly earlier than the release date, which just helped with the buzz and the marketing of the record. In Meet Me in the Bathroom, Tunde says that people would bring burned CDs to get them signed way more than once. And they'd say, "I just want you to autograph it." I remember doing it in one case because I could see in the person's eyes that they had no idea how horrible or offensive that was. Which I think is interesting because obviously they're a band that embraces that leaking culture and the internet culture, but also like to bring the burned CD to the band to sign that's pretty, I don't know. Other guests on the record, other than David Bowie, include Stuart T. Bogey of Anti-Ballast, Martin Perna, Blonde Redhead, and Yeah Yeah Yeah's Nick Zinner. One of the things that I wanted to talk about this album is sort of the wide range of sounds that it has and how it kind of hits almost every genre in the indie scene in one record. A song that I always go back to on this record, even though it's not my favorite song on the record, but I think it's so emblematic of the creativity of this band, is this song, which is called A Method.
Eyes wide, mind, suddenly everything flies by fine. Mind goes on holiday in its stead, clicking along the curb, clucking tongues. How could they have the nerve? There is hardly a method, you know. There is hardly a method, you know. It's a broken home, started up yesterday and it came true now. Mine was on holiday, it's an open road. Will we soon see the tell the band there is hardly a method you know. Broken plates on dirty highways pave the way for any new race. Broken plates on dirty highways pave the way for any new race.
Obviously, a song that's just sort of sparsely created. And a thing I like about that song is the Return to Cookie Mountain Wikipedia page is extremely detailed in breaking down who plays what on every single song on the record. And some of the songs, like Wolf Like Me, has 3 guitars, bass, drums, saxophone. Let the Devil In has samples. Dirty World has Rhodes and samples and synths. And I like that this one just has vocals, samples, keys, and percussion. And it's just the 5 guys in the band. And it sounds like it's just them in a room doing it. And I just think it's a very cool track.
Yeah, it's cool when, like, you take this big band that does a lot of layered stuff and kind of, I guess not minimalize it because it's still, like, there's a lot going on there, but, like, kind of strip it down a little bit. It's fun. I am very curious how that one plays live.
Me too. I've seen them a couple times, so I've never seen that.
Yeah, maybe it just doesn't play well live then, because it does, it stands out as a little different than, I mean, I've only seen YouTube's, but yeah, it's harder to picture that one going on live the way that they play than it is with some of the other songs.
Yeah, I think a lot of that. Speaking of, I was going to get into this about how this record is so built on, and really a lot of their records, but especially this one, is built on electronic beats and repetition, which is on purpose, as Dave Sitek told Pitchfork. Through the trauma of birth, we're thrown into these repetitions, everything from our heartbeat to our routines, and I think that's identifiable. When you look at commercial music, it's created all these different jobs, but if you look at a lot of the music that we listen to, particularly Afrobeat and High Life and a lot of music from like Mali, it's based on repetition. This guy named Fagan, I apologize if I pronounced that wrong, who played with Fela Kuti for a while, was telling about the hypnotic effect of music. He's like, the most important drum in Afrobeat is not a drum, it's the hi-hat, because it hypnotizes, and that's what people identify with. It syncs with their heartbeat, which I think is a really interesting way to look at rhythm, and for a band that is built their sound so much on rhythm, it makes sense to me that they have such a total understanding of that idea. But despite their mass production, so to speak, of their records, one thing that I love about TV on the Radio is how they are almost a completely different band on stage. Like if you've ever seen TV on the Radio, they turn into this loud rock band that, not that they don't have loud rock songs on the record, but it's really they remix a lot of their songs live. And it's like seeing a completely different beast. And they're truly a fantastic live band. They actually have some theories on that. Kip Malone told Time Out New York that they come together on stage because it's the time you actually get to play music, which is the point of being on the road, and it becomes the time of sanity. He expands sort of that the group has many hobbies outside the band. Malone helms a group called Rain Machine. Adebempe acts and directs. He was in the movie Rachel Getting Married, if you've seen that one. Dave Sitek obviously produces a billion projects and also has his Maximum Balloon project. Jaleel Bunton plays with Reverend Vice Anderson, and Gerard Smith, before he sadly passed away, was composing music for a public education documentary at this time. So the band, it seems like when they play live, they just sort of come together, as Malone says. And what it results in is incredible shows, but also incredible late night appearances, including what I believe, and I will have this debate, because you can correct me if you disagree, but what I believe is the greatest late night performance of all time, which is their performance of the massive aforementioned Wolf Like Me on David Letterman.
on the radio. That's all you're looking for. Nice going.
So I feel like on top of the album leaking way in advance and getting 2 million hits on an early YouTube video from a Letterman performance, the buzz here was pretty good, man.
Yeah, I would say so. And it paid off in the reception of this album and the reception of the band's kind of going forward as well.
We're going to talk about how the album was received and what the band was like going forward after this. All right, so like we said, it leaks. Get a lot of views on YouTube, a lot of buzz from Letterman. Jake, how did this album perform?
Extremely well. It is one of the best reviewed indie rock records of the decade. It was second on Pitchfork's Best of 2006 list. It was first on Spin's list and fourth on Rolling Stone Stylus and Slants. Blender has named it the 96th greatest indie rock record of all time. Rhapsody named it the 8th best album of the decade. And as of 2014, it had sold 242,000 copies.
Despite all of that, it peaked at 41 on Billboard.
Considering Wolf Like Me was so huge, that surprises me. But I also don't have...
And indie had picked up at this point.
Yeah.
It's not like they were before the boom, right? It was right around here. So that surprised me going back and seeing that. I would have guessed that, maybe not number one, but I would have guessed that it had, it charted higher than that for sure, especially given the reviews.
Yeah, and Wolf Like Me even only hit 37 on the alternative chart and didn't even chart on the 200. But I guess people were buying records back then, so breaking into sort of the pop sphere of things was perhaps a little more challenging.
Yeah, I guess that's possible. If indie was, like you said, TV on the radio being quicker to web than most and having the leaks, maybe that killed some of the sales momentum.
Maybe. But the band would soldier on, as bands do. They released Dear Science in 2008, which is my favorite TV on the radio record that we easily could have done today. That one was even better received than Cookie Mountain. It was named the best album of 2008 by Rolling Stone, The Guardian, Spin, MTV, Entertainment Weekly, the Pitchfork Readers Poll, and The Village Voice. And it was named the 140th best album of the decade by Pitchfork. I think a very cool evolution of their sound. A little more straightforward, I think, a little more accessible.
It was also very of the time. Came out in September 2008 as the political landscape was shifting. And it was, as we mentioned a little earlier, pretty critical of Bush. It's on a lot of those lists of, hey, this bad political time gave us this good music, which is a trope that has gotten ridiculous here in 2020. And I don't have great faith that we're actually going to look back and be like, hey, well, there's some great music from that at least. But Dear Science was that, including this song, Dancing Shoes.
He's a what? He's a what? He's a newspaper man. And he gets his best ideas from a newspaper stand. From his boots to his pants, to his comments and his rants. He knows that any little article will do. Though he expresses some confusion about his part in the plan. And he can't understand that he's not in command. The decision's underwritten by the cash in his hand. Bought a sweater for his Wamarana too. Now I'm no madman, but that's insanity. It's before feminine, more before family. Goes and shows up with more bowls and more cups. And the ride from the last hot meal erupts. Corrupts his hard drive to the leanest months. Shuts out the hard cash for the sickest stunts. On aftershave, on gasoline. He flips the page and turns the scene. In my mind I'm drowning butterflies. Broken dreams and alibis. That's fine. I've seen my palette flow to monochrome. Hollow heart clicks, hollow tongue. In time I see you figure it. Your action pose. Phone injected axle rose. Lifestyle. Should something shake you and you drop the news? Lord, just keep your dancing shoes off mine.
The band would continue their, I guess, career. Why I said it that way. They would release 9 Types of Light in 2011, which is more of a...
That's too many types.
It's too many types. It's more of a slow jam record by their own admission, but it's still very good because all of their albums are really good. As I mentioned earlier, briefly, Gerard Smith sadly passed away in April of 2011 from lung cancer. The band would reunite to record. They recorded a couple singles in 2013. One is called Mercy, which is such a good song. Check it out. And they also released Seeds in 2014. Since 2014, they have toured intermittently and played shows, but haven't released any new music since. And I would like them to, because TV on the Radio kick ass, and I want to hear more TV on the Radio songs.
Quick question for you before we get into the ranking segment. If you look at Dave Sidek's Wikipedia page, or the TV on the Radio one rather, there's a now unsourced link to an interview he did with a Danish magazine called Sound Venue in 2010. I can't find it in English anywhere. Maybe someone can pass that along. But paraphrasing based on the Wikipedia translation, Sidek found the Brooklyn music scene to be a bit opportunistic and hypocritical, with kind of, the way it got phrased was that bands started to write music that writers would want to write about, and that was a problem. And I guess my question for you is whether or not that applied to this scene would be a much longer discussion. But do you think that like every genre bubble eventually reaches that point where like, because that bubble or that subgenre is successful at the moment, like could you see, like where artists like Mitski and Phoebe Bridgers and Laura Stevenson are becoming really big right now, you zoom forward 2-3 years, are there artists who are writing to kind of become a part of that movement instead of just writing? And is that kind of what Sitek was maybe getting at there, or do you have any thought on that at all?
Yeah, I think that does happen. I mean, we've seen it a bunch, and I'm sure we've talked about a bunch in like the punk boom of the 90s. Like you look at, the fat rec chord bands, and even just the bands that came out of sort of the Green Day boom and then the Blink boom and all those. I do think it does. I think it's just natural. And I think that's why genres kind of come and go in a way, and why we're seeing now sort of the re-rising of stuff like emo and pop punk, because they had their moment and then the bubble burst and it kind of got overrun with, if not bad bands, at least not the sort of peak of it. And now the people who were influenced by that when they were young are bringing it back. And I think that's sort of a natural progression of things.
I think you're right. I think that's well said. Speaking of moments and bubbles like that, we got to do some ranking. And Jake, I think that transitions us. We'll rank songs in a second, but you wanted to rank our favorite bands from Meet Me in the Bathroom.
Yeah, I don't know if this needs to be an exact, like, you must rank your top 5 Meet in the Bathroom bands, but I was thinking about sort of what we were talking about off the top of the show, about how bands that you really like that you don't listen to so consistently, and then when you come back to them, like, oh, they're so good. And I think a lot of the Meet Me in the Bathroom bands are like that. And I kind of want to talk about, I feel like in the sphere of the bands in that book, TV on the Radio are obviously in there and discussed, but I feel like they're not the first band you would think of when you think of the bands coming out of that book. And I'm less interested in ranking specifically our favorites, which I do want to still do because I think it's interesting. But like, why is it that you think that they're not? Is it just because they haven't put out music in 6 years, so they're kind of like not in the moment right now? But I just feel like they don't get, for a band that was so successful and so critically praised, I feel like they don't get talked about in the same notion that like an Interpol does. Which is not a slight on Interpol, but
no, but that's where it's weird to me is the reviews. Like when you look back and it's like, oh, they only peaked at 41, and like Wolf Like Me was really the only, kind of breakthrough single, and it didn't even chart that high. Like you could sell me on a Walkman-ish, like, oh, they just kind of get forgotten about because there were so many bands at the time, and like, other than, for the Walkman, they had the one song that clicked. For these guys, it would be the 2 albums that were reviewed really well and weren't crazy successful commercially. But when you look at the reviews, like that's the type of thing that usually sustains a band's legacy moving forward a decade or 2 decades. It's that it was, you know, the number one album of 2006 for Spin, or it was, you know, number whatever of the decade. Those are usually the ones that those bands tend to age better, be remembered better, I think. And yeah, it hasn't happened for this, and I can't really speak to why, because again, the TV on the Radio are a band I came to only recently. After reading Meet Me in the Bathroom, they were not a band that was on my radar back at the time. So I don't really know. I don't have a good answer, Jake. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, nor do I. But I think, and even like Dear Science charted pretty well. Like it hit 12 on the Billboard and 4th on the rock charts, and was so incredibly well reviewed. But yeah, I don't know. I find it interesting, I suppose.
Give us your theories in the Discord chat. If you are a Patreon subscriber and you're in the Discord, give us your theories. And if you're not, and you want to be, and you want to give us those theories, patreon.com/Columbia House Party. Jake, to the deeper but much less important point, give me your top 3 bands from Meet Me in the Bathroom.
I mean, I obviously, despite myself, have to put LCD first, because that's just who I am. Honestly, and I'm not just saying it because it's this episode, but I think just from talking about it and going back and listening, I think I would have TV on the Radio number 2.
All right.
Like I was really into this band, and they're such an excellent band that I'm okay putting them number 2. And then for number 3, I would probably, my number 3 for,
it's always the hardest to pick the third, because then you're leaving everyone else.
That's it, right? So I'm gonna cheat, and I'm gonna do a tie between the Walkman and Interpol, but it's probably just the Walkman.
All right, we don't have much overlap. I would go in some order: Regina Spektor, Yeah Yeah Yeahs, and the Killers.
If we were doing like a top 10 list, those would all be on my list, but we're only picking 3.
Yeah, and that's all we're gonna do. We're gonna rank some songs quickly too, off of Return to Cookie Mountain. I'm of the mind that the top 3 in some order are like there's chalk here. There's less. A lot of the times with these ones, after 1 or 2, you get into some subjectivity. I feel like the 3 most popular ones are going to be the 3 best songs. At least they are for me. What do you got, Jake?
I would agree with you on. Well, I assume the 3 you're talking about are Wolf Like Me, Province, and what's your third? I'm curious.
I Was a Lover.
Yeah, I think I would probably put Blues from Down Here in place of I Was a Lover. But I agree with you that I don't think this is a singles heavy record, so to speak, because it is so deep and good.
No, there were only 2 singles.
That too. But I mean heavy in terms of like the quality dips.
Reliance?
Reliance, a better word. But I do think that Province and Wolf Like Me are like not only classic indie songs, they're just outstanding songs. And then I Just Like Blues from Down.
And what are you going to do? Not put the Bowie song in your top 3?
Yeah.
Come on.
Who are we? Who are we to say no?
All right, I believe that leads us to picking a song for the mixtape, unless you have anything else on TV on the Radio.
No, I am good to mixtape.
What do you think? I think we have it down to 2 then. It's just a matter of picking Wolf Like Me or Province.
I think I would go Province because I think it represents the album better. If that makes sense.
Sure. Also, everyone already knows Wolf Like Me, and
also
there's a chance that Province. I mean, seriously though, like if this is a band where, especially some of the younger listenership or whatever, if someone listens to this is like, oh, I haven't checked that band out, like I'll check them out. You know, Wolf Like Me is probably a song that they're gonna recognize, or
yeah, I mean, it wasn't
up to a certain level of youth, I guess. Yeah. But Province could be the hook. Province could be the hook. All right, so Province is going on the mixtape. As a reminder, your theories on this TV on the Radio discussion and a bunch of other stuff, if you'd like, in the Discord. All right, guys, thanks for listening.